The day my psycho neighbor Karen tried to steal my family's dream lake, I bought all 42 acres plus the shoreline she'd been using for 12 years. Then I built a 6-foot spite fence that cuts her $1.8 million backyard exactly in half. 8:17 a.m., she charges out in her pink silk robe, slippers sinking, screaming as my crew drives steel posts through her prize English roses. Petals fly like red snow. Her husband in pajama pants yanks her back, yelling, "Babe, they're filming." But she's climbing the chain link, nails snapping, threatening sheriff, HOA, governor, and God. I sip coffee by my new no trespassing sign, watching mascara rivers ruin her Botox, smell of crushed roses and pure defeat everywhere. Triple-checked the deed. This fence is 100% legal, 1 inch inside my line, and I'm nowhere near done. Drop A if you're lakeside right now. Smash subscribe before Karen calls the FBI, and tell me your wildest neighbor revenge below. Here's how a greedy neighbor turned our retirement dream into a 12-year war. I'm Dale, 52, spent 30 years under car hoods until 3 herniated discs ended my auto shop career. My wife Cheryl's battling lupus, the kind that makes your joints feel like broken glass every morning. Doctors said low-impact water therapy was her only shot at staying mobile without a wheelchair. We scraped together every damn penny for 15 years. Ate generic cereal, drove a rusted-out pickup, skipped every vacation while our friends posted beach photos. All for 1.2 acres of lakefront paradise on Willow Lake, northern Michigan. The cabin looked like a fishing shack compared to the mansions around us, but those 200 feet of pristine shoreline, pure gold. Then we met our psychotic neighbor. Karen Whitmore owns the $1.8 million fortress next door. All glass and steel jutting into the sky like some rich person's middle finger to nature. This woman inherited more money than most people see in 3 lifetimes, married Bradley, who basically runs municipal zoning and treats this lake like her personal country club. Here's where it gets interesting. For 12 years, while our property sat empty under some dead guy's estate, Princess Karen decided our shoreline was hers, her private dock, her jet ski storage, her pontoon boat parties. The previous owner lived in Chicago, visited twice a year, and couldn't care less what happened. So Karen just took it. Day 1 after moving in, I'm fixing our dock when I hear the sharp click of heels on wood. Karen struts down wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country, waving official-looking papers that smelled like expensive lies. "This is an established recreational easement," she announces, voice dripping fake authority. "You can't block community lake access." Community access. On private property I'd bled to afford. Those papers? Beautiful forgeries on township letterhead? The woman had actually counterfeited government documents to steal my land. "Ma'am, this is my dock, my shoreline, my property." Her perfectly Botoxed face shifted from country club sweet to Arctic cold in 2 seconds. We'll see about that. 20 minutes later, Sheriff Morrison rolls up in his cruiser. Turns out he's Karen's golf partner and barbecue buddy. She's got actual tears streaming down her cheeks, probably the first genuine emotion she'd shown in decades, sobbing about how I threatened her safety and violated established community agreements. Morrison looked at me like I'd personally insulted his mother. "Dale, maybe you folks can work this out neighborly. No need for lawyers over a little dock space." A little dock space that I'd saved 15 years to own. But Karen was just getting started. Within a week, code violation notices appeared like a bad rash. My dock repair? Unapproved waterfront construction? The small fire pit for Cheryl's evening therapy sessions? Illegal outdoor burning in residential zone? Even my mailbox was suddenly non-conforming height violation. Every permit I filed disappeared into bureaucratic quicksand while Karen's applications got rubber-stamped faster than McDonald's orders. Amazing how efficiency improves when your husband controls zoning approvals. The whisper campaign started immediately. Karen told neighbors we were lowering property values with our inappropriate trailer park modifications. Called us the wrong element for a family-oriented lakefront community. Translation: not rich enough for her royal standards. The breaking point hit during Karen's 4th of July yacht party. I'm helping Cheryl with her evening water therapy when we hear live music blasting from our own shoreline. 20 of Karen's country club friends drinking champagne and eating catered lobster on a buffet table they'd set up on my property. When I politely asked them to relocate, Karen stood up with a glass of wine and announced to her guests, "Everyone, this is our unstable neighbor I warned you about. He's probably dangerous." The taste of humiliation mixed with rage was bitter as burnt coffee. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about sharing lake access. This was about Karen believing everything she could see belonged to her, and my modest retirement dream was blocking the view of her kingdom. Time to teach royalty about property rights. Karen's first move was pure bureaucratic warfare. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, and she had the government on speed dial. Monday morning, I'm drinking coffee and planning Cheryl's therapy schedule when Bradley's zoning office calls. Apparently, my 40-year-old dock needs a comprehensive environmental impact study before any repairs can continue. Cost, $12,000. Timeline, 6 to 8 months. But it's been here since 1983, I told the clerk. New regulations, sir. Your neighbor filed a complaint about potential wetland disruption. Wetland disruption, from fixing 3 loose boards on a dock older than most of the fish in the lake. By Wednesday, Karen escalated to historical preservation. My humble cabin violated newly established architectural guidelines for maintaining period-appropriate lakefront character. Guidelines that appeared overnight like mushrooms after rain, written specifically to target anything under $500,000. The smell of Karen's manipulation was stronger than the algae blooming near her illegal dock extensions. Friday brought the environmental agency inspection. I'm waiting when Karen arrives in full makeup at 7 a.m., leading some nervous bureaucrat around like he's touring a crime scene. Her voice drips fake concern as she points at my property with perfectly manicured nails. You can see the unauthorized shoreline modifications, she's saying. And that fire pit is definitely contaminating runoff into protected fish spawning areas. Fish spawning areas, in a lake that's been stocked with recreational bass since Nixon was president. The inspector starts photographing my perfectly legal campfire ring. That's when I noticed fresh trash scattered around my property line. Cigarette butts, food wrappers, even a broken beer bottle placed strategically near the water. Karen had staged evidence like some budget CSI villain. But 30 years fixing engines teaches you to diagnose problems before they destroy everything. Time to pop Karen's hood and see what kind of fraud was running her operation. I spent 3 days at the county courthouse digging through property records. The taste of stale courthouse coffee became my fuel as I traced deed transfers, easement agreements, and permit histories going back decades. My old friend Jerry from the tax assessor's office helped me navigate the bureaucratic maze. Turns out knowing people who actually work for a living has advantages over country club connections. What I discovered was absolutely beautiful. Karen's precious dock extended 15 feet into public waterway without a single permit. Her boat lift, installed without environmental review in designated fish habitat, those underwater LED lights she bragged about, completely illegal in spawning zones. Even better, and this was the mini twist that changed everything, my property survey revealed Karen's daddy had screwed up the original purchase. My land extended 25 feet further east than anyone realized. Her outdoor kitchen, half her pool deck, and that prize-winning rose garden were sitting pretty on my property. Jerry had mentioned something about quiet title actions during one of our conversations about boundary disputes. Basically, you force an expensive legal survey where the loser pays all costs. Separates serious property owners from rich people playing games with fake papers. The surveyor's report was poetry in motion. Sharp metal stakes driven deep into Karen's manicured lawn, marking the real property line while she watched from her kitchen window. Her face went white as fresh primer when those measurements came back official. I called the state DNR that afternoon, filed formal complaints about every unpermitted structure Karen had built in protected waters. GPS coordinates, timestamp photos, detailed measurements, presented like evidence in a criminal trial. DNR Inspector Frank was a weathered guy who'd clearly dealt with entitled lakefront royalty before. He took one look at Karen's setup and started writing violations faster than a traffic cop at a speed trap. "Ma'am, these structures need removal within 30 days or you're facing $5,000 daily fines," Frank told her, his voice carrying the authority of someone who couldn't be bought, charmed, or intimidated. Karen tried the tearful victim routine, but Frank was immune to her performance. "Should have pulled permits before building, ma'am. Ignorance of the law isn't a defense, especially when you've got money for lawyers, but not for following regulations." Karen's meltdown was spectacular theater. She stormed into the next township meeting like a Category 5 hurricane, voice cracking with manufactured outrage. "This man is using government agencies to harass longtime residents. He's threatening our neighborhood's established character. His dangerous modifications are destroying our lake's precious ecosystem." The irony was thick enough to spread on toast, coming from someone who'd been violating environmental laws for over a decade. She hired Morton and Associates, those $400 per hour legal sharks who specialized in drowning problems in expensive paperwork. They challenged everything. The survey results, DNR's authority, even my right to file complaints as a recent resident. But Karen made the classic rich person mistake. She declared total war on someone with nothing left to lose. 6 a.m. music concerts aimed at our bedroom window. Industrial floodlights turning our living room into an interrogation chamber. Weekly noise complaints for using a hammer during legal construction hours. She even sicked Adult Protective Services on us, claiming I was exploiting Cheryl's lupus for sympathy and financial advantage. Game on, princess. Let's see how royalty handles a real fight. Karen's nuclear option came disguised as environmental activism, but she just picked a fight with the wrong lake, and the wrong mechanic who actually reads legal documents. 2 weeks after those DNR citations landed, I'm grabbing my mail when a bright yellow for sale sign appears on the old Camp Wildwood property, like a bad omen. 3 pristine acres of lakefront directly north of mine, including the entire shoreline that controlled boat access to the main lake. The place had been quietly rotting since the summer camp closed in 2019, but suddenly someone was moving lightning fast to snatch it up. That someone was Lakeshore Development LLC, a shell company that traced back through 3 layers of legal paperwork to Karen's personal attorney. The woman was trying to buy my lake access right out from under me, and with her daddy's trust fund money, she had the firepower to make it happen. The metallic taste of panic mixed with rage as I realized Karen's strategy. Control the adjacent property, control my access, force me to sell cheap and crawl away defeated. But Princess Karen had made one beautiful mistake. She assumed I was just some broke grease monkey who'd gotten lucky buying lakefront property above my pay grade. I called my brother-in-law Jim that same night. He'd been flipping houses in Detroit for 15 years, knew every dirty trick in the real estate game, and owed me a favor from when I rebuilt his transmission for free. Over beers on my dock, watching Karen's illegal underwater lights turn the water purple, Jim dropped some knowledge that changed everything. "Dale, you better dig through your deed papers for something called right of first refusal," he said, crushing his empty Bud Light with the satisfaction of a man who'd seen rich folks get outsmarted before. Those old lakefront properties from the 60s sometimes have clauses giving neighbors first dibs on connecting parcels. Right of first refusal. I'd seen those words buried in the legal gibberish when I bought the place, but they'd meant nothing to me then. Now they meant everything. Spent the next day at the county recorder's office with a magnifying glass and determination, tracing property records back to 1967. The original developer had been smart, wrote right of first refusal into every single lakefront deed to keep the lake community intact and prevent outside speculators from carving it up. Karen's shell company could bid $1 million if they wanted. Legally, I got first shot at that property, and there wasn't a damn thing her expensive lawyers could do about it. The look on the real estate agent's face when I exercised that clause was worth the price of admission. I outbid Karen's fake company by exactly $1. $125,001 for the entire Camp Wildwood property, purchased with a loan secured by my truck, tools, and every favor I could call in. But here's where it gets beautiful. That property didn't just come with lake access. It came with mineral rights, a forgotten commercial fishing lease generating $2,000 monthly from the state, and something that made Karen's face go white as fresh snow when she found out. Buried in those 1967 easement agreements was a legal access road that ran directly through what was now Karen's backyard. For 58 years, that easement had been illegally blocked by Karen's landscaping projects. Her prize-winning rose garden, decorative fencing, outdoor kitchen setup, and half her entertainment area were sitting pretty on a recorded right-of-way that I now controlled as the adjoining property owner. Karen's meltdown when the deed transfer hit public records could probably be heard from orbit. She stormed into Township Supervisor Martinez's office like Napoleon retreating from Moscow, demanding they reverse the sale for environmental fraud and conspiracy against established residents. When Martinez politely explained that legal property sales can't be reversed because someone doesn't like the outcome, Karen switched to environmental theater. She hired 20 college kids from State University to stage what she called an emergency conservation protest. Paid them $50 each to march around with professionally printed Save Our Lake signs while Channel 7 News filmed her performance as a concerned environmental activist. The smell of irony was thicker than swamp gas. Karen, who'd been violating environmental laws for over a decade, positioning herself as the lake's guardian angel. Her hired protesters had no clue what they were protesting, just following scripts about corporate lake destruction and environmental terrorism. They accidentally trampled Mrs. Henderson's prized flower garden, knocked over the Johnsons' decorative mailbox, and left McDonald's trash scattered across the public boat launch. By evening, Karen had accomplished something I never could have managed alone. She'd turned half the neighborhood against her own cause, but she was just getting warmed up. Karen filed a federal lawsuit claiming my purchase was fraudulent conspiracy to monopolize recreational water access. Her legal team argued that 1960s right of first refusal clauses were antiquated, unenforceable relics that violated modern property rights. Meanwhile, the sabotage campaign escalated. Sugar in my boat motor destroyed a $2,000 outboard. Cut dock lines sent our pontoon floating into public waters where vandals could have stripped it clean. Property line markers disappeared faster than free beer at a construction site. Now I owned the lake bottom, controlled all access points, and held legal rights to drive trucks through Karen's backyard anytime I wanted. Game, set, and match, princess. Karen's psychological warfare campaign reached peak insanity the day my fence contractor rolled up with a truck full of 6-foot cedar panels and the legal paperwork to slice her kingdom in half. First, she hired some greasy private investigator, looked like he crawled out of a 1980s divorce case, to excavate my entire life history. Military records, credit reports, employment history, even Cheryl's medical files. Karen wanted dirt, any dirt, to paint me as dangerous, unstable, or broke enough to accept her buyout offer. The PI's report must have been disappointing. 30 years of steady work, honorable discharge, clean record despite medical debt, and a marriage that survived more storms than Karen's ego could handle. But since when do facts stop entitled rich people from creating their own reality? She launched a whisper campaign that would make Cold War propagandists proud, posted on neighborhood Facebook groups claiming I was clearly suffering from PTSD and probably dangerous around children. Told anyone who'd listen that I'd threatened violence during our property discussions and suggested families keep their distance from that unstable veteran. Karen even staged a soap opera injury, suddenly appearing with a designer neck brace claiming my fence construction had damaged her award-winning garden and caused her to fall while investigating property destruction. The woman deserved an Oscar for her performance as the innocent victim. But 30 years fixing broken engines taught me something valuable. When someone's making too much noise, they're usually trying to hide a bigger problem under the hood. Karen was about to discover her engine was completely shot. My fence route cut through her outdoor paradise like a chainsaw through silk. 6 feet of beautiful cedar positioned exactly 1 inch inside my legal property line, blocking her lake view and splitting her entertainment area down the middle. Every post surveyed, every permit approved, completely bulletproof under township law. The sharp crack of my nail gun echoed across the water as we worked, mixing with Karen's increasingly hysterical phone calls to lawyers, township supervisors, and anyone else who'd pretend to care about her manufactured crisis. Her husband Bradley tried the reasonable neighbor approach, offering to work out a financial arrangement to relocate my fence and preserve everyone's property values. Translation: how much money would it take to let Karen keep pretending she owned my land? Bradley, I said, brushing sawdust off my work gloves, this fence sits on my property, built to code, protecting my family from your wife's harassment. Moving it would be like rewarding a thief for stealing. That's when the construction revealed Karen's beautiful secret. My fence line exposed what her landscaping had been hiding for over a decade. Her septic drain field extended 20 feet onto my property. Those prize-winning roses weren't just decorative. They were a living cover-up for an environmental violation worth $50,000 in fines plus mandatory system relocation. The sour smell of treated sewage mixing with expensive mulch explained why that corner of my land stayed swampy even during drought summers. Princess Karen had been using my property as her personal waste treatment facility, and her roses were literally growing fat on illegal runoff. Digging test holes along the fence revealed the full scope of her violation. Rich, dark soil that squelched between my fingers, contaminated with years of Karen's household waste. The woman who'd spent months lecturing me about environmental protection was secretly dumping sewage on my land. Her attorney called within hours, suddenly interested in amicable settlement discussions and mutually beneficial boundary agreements. Amazing how quickly legal threats evaporate when someone discovers your client has been breaking environmental laws for years. But Karen's public meltdown was worth the price of admission to this whole circus. She appeared at my construction site the next morning wielding bolt cutters like some deranged suburban warrior, still wearing her pink silk robe, but now accessorized with mud stains and pure rage. Her perfectly styled hair looked like she'd been struck by lightning, and her voice cracked with hysteria. "You cannot build this illegal spite fence. This is harassment. This is discrimination," she shrieked, attacking my chain link like it had personally insulted her ancestry. My foreman Miguel calmly showed her our construction permits and explained we were following legal specifications. That's when Karen's mask completely slipped off and revealed the racist monster underneath. She started screaming about calling immigration on my illegal Mexican workers. Despite Miguel's contractor license and citizenship papers being clearly visible on his clipboard, called me white trash, who was definitely not the right kind of people for this neighborhood. Told my crew they were destroying property values just by breathing our air. Miguel just smiled and kept working while his guys filmed Karen's racist tirade for their own protection. By lunch, her meltdown was circulating through every construction crew's group chat in 3 counties. Local contractors started blacklisting Karen after seeing how she treated working families. Her country club friends began making excuses to avoid her calls. Even the neighborhood kids started calling her crazy fence lady and daring each other to ride bikes past her house. The fence was completed in 3 days. 6 feet of gorgeous cedar privacy barrier that sliced Karen's view, blocked her access, and served her a daily reminder that property rights actually matter. Princess Karen's empire was crumbling, 1 fence post at a time. The smoking gun that would destroy Karen's empire arrived in a manila envelope 3 days after her racist fence meltdown, delivered by my attorney's paralegal, who'd been digging through municipal records like she was hunting buried treasure. The taste of sweet revenge mixed with black coffee as I spread those documents across my kitchen table while Cheryl read over my shoulder. What we found was corruption so beautiful it belonged in a museum. Bradley Whitmore had been operating a pay-for-play permit scheme that would embarrass a mob boss. Bank records showed cash deposits matching the exact dates of every fast-track zoning approval over 5 years. Mysterious consulting fees appearing in Karen's accounts 24 hours after favorable township decisions. The Whitmore family had turned municipal government into their personal ATM machine. But the email chain between Karen and Bradley was pure prosecutorial gold, printed in black and white like a confession signed in their own blood. "The lake problem needs permanent solution," Karen had written last summer. "Dale's permits disappear until I control adjoining property. Make it happen or find new job." Bradley's response made my hands shake with anticipation. "Consider it handled, babe. Municipal review takes forever when applications get misfiled. Guy will give up and sell cheap within 6 months. Criminal conspiracy documented in their own words, dated and stored on government servers like evidence gift-wrapped for prosecutors." The corruption ran deeper than simple permit manipulation. Karen's family had been running illegal vacation rentals for 3 years, 5 bedrooms, premium lakefront rates, 0 permits or taxes, $200,000 in unreported income, while they lectured neighbors about maintaining community standards and protecting property values. The federal wetlands fraud was the crown jewel that would send them both to prison. Karen had stolen $75,000 in environmental protection grants, money specifically allocated for shoreline restoration that she'd used to fund her illegal dock improvements and underwater lighting systems. Government conservation funds stolen to pay for the very environmental crimes she was now being prosecuted for. County Commissioner Frank Delacroix was Bradley's golf buddy and willing partner, taking bribes disguised as landscape consulting payments to his wife's fake business. The man had been fast-tracking Karen's applications while deliberately sabotaging anyone who crossed the Whitmore family. That explained Karen's 12-year reign of terror. She wasn't just breaking rules, she owned the people who wrote them. The sharp smell of legal documents mixed with the satisfaction of finally understanding why Karen felt invincible. She'd been operating her own shadow government, selling favorable decisions while using official power to crush anyone who threatened her operation. My attorney had laid out the evidence like cards in a royal flush. "Dale, this isn't just harassment. You've uncovered federal racketeering. Karen's not a bad neighbor. She's the head of a criminal organization that's been stealing taxpayer money and violating civil rights under color of law." The beautiful part? Princess Karen had no idea I held this nuclear weapon. She was still playing petty neighbor games while I'd uncovered evidence that could send her to federal prison for decades. Instead of immediately exposing everything, I made a strategic decision that would let Karen destroy herself publicly. Give her enough rope to hang herself, while federal investigators watched her commit crimes on camera, thinking she was still untouchable. Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI's white-collar crime unit had been tracking Bradley's operation for months, just waiting for someone with evidence and legal standing to file formal complaints. Mr. Dale, what you've discovered could dismantle an entire municipal corruption network, but we need documentation of ongoing criminal activity. Can you help us catch them in the act? Karen was about to walk into a trap she'd built with her own greed and arrogance. Time to watch royalty fall from the highest possible height. With Karen's criminal empire exposed and federal agents hungry for more evidence, it was time to build the coalition that would destroy her reign of terror, using her own arrogance as the weapon to bring her down. My kitchen table transformed into mission control, covered with legal documents, environmental reports, and a growing list of Karen's victims who'd been suffering in silence for years. The rich aroma of Cheryl's homemade coffee mixed with the electric taste of long overdue justice finally within reach. First recruitment call went to Margaret Chen, leader of the Willow Lake Environmental Group, a collection of retired teachers and genuine nature lovers who'd been documenting Karen's environmental crimes for years without realizing they were building a federal case. Dale, we've got water quality data going back to 2015 showing exactly when Karen's septic violations started killing fish, Margaret said, spreading color-coded charts across my table, like battle plans drawn in scientific precision. Her illegal underwater lights have disrupted natural feeding patterns so badly that bass reproduction dropped 60%. Those dock extensions create stagnant death zones perfect for toxic algae blooms. Margaret's group had been collecting smoking gun evidence while Karen dismissed them as crazy tree huggers who hate progress. pH measurements, population surveys, photographic documentation of every violation, all meticulously recorded by people who actually understood ecosystem science. Next target was investigative journalist Lisa Rodriguez from Channel 7, who'd been circling Bradley's corruption for months, like a shark smelling blood in the water. Her eyes went wide when I spread the email evidence and bank records across her desk. Holy shit, Dale. Excuse my French, but this is RICO-level corruption. We're not talking about one bad neighbor. Karen and Bradley have been running a criminal syndicate disguised as municipal government, and you've just handed me the story of my career. Lisa had already identified dozens of other victims. Small business owners bankrupted by permit delays after refusing consulting fee demands, elderly residents harassed with bogus code violations for opposing Karen's political candidates, working families driven from the township by manufactured bureaucratic terrorism. The legal strategy session revealed the beautiful scope of our nuclear option. Beyond federal criminal charges, we had civil rights violations under Section 1983, using government authority to violate constitutional protections. Financial damages could hit 7 figures, but the real prize was permanent injunctive relief that would strip Karen of any future power to abuse official authority. My brother-in-law Jim brought his real estate expertise and natural talent for screwing over entitled rich people. Dale, you're sitting on 3 acres of prime lakefront that could serve hundreds of families instead of one spoiled princess. Accessible swimming for disabled folks, youth fishing programs, maybe even outdoor education center that actually protects the environment. The technical preparation required precision that would make Navy SEALs proud. Professional security systems with crystal-clear audio recording, completely legal in Michigan for property protection. Multiple evidence backup systems stored in locations Karen's money couldn't reach. Anonymous tip lines for corruption victims ready to testify once someone broke the wall of fear. But the psychological trap was pure genius, designed to exploit Karen's fatal weakness. Her desperate compulsion to control every social situation and be the center of attention at all times. I announced a Community Lake Stewardship Festival for the exact same weekend as Karen's annual exclusive Lakefront Gala. Open invitation to all residents, families encouraged, featuring environmental presentations, honest officials, and extensive media coverage of our conservation success story. The beauty was watching Karen's dilemma unfold in real time. She could crash our community celebration and expose herself as the petty dictator she'd always been, with cameras rolling and federal agents watching. Or she could stay home and watch her social kingdom crumble as the community celebrated actual environmental protection instead of her fake conservation theater. Either choice would destroy her, because Karen physically couldn't resist confronting challenges to her authority, especially in front of important people and news cameras. Cheryl's recovery had become the emotional center driving every decision. Watching her swim freely in clean water, seeing her laugh with neighbor kids learning to fish, witnessing her natural leadership as she organized accessibility improvements. That's what we were really fighting for. Not just property rights, but the principle that decent families deserve protection from corrupt officials who treat public service like their personal piggy bank. The community response was explosive. Local fishing guides emerged from hiding to share stories of Karen's harassment and threats. Small business owners revealed years of permit extortion and bureaucratic intimidation they'd been too scared to report. Even some country club members began quietly providing information about Karen's bribery attempts and abuse of social connections. The sweet scent of impending victory was replacing the stench of corruption that had poisoned our community for over a decade. Veterans from My American Legion post volunteered security. Environmental scientists offered expertise. Honest township officials promised transparency reforms. Media outlets competed for exclusive access to the biggest corruption story in county history. Karen's empire was surrounded, her criminal network exposed, her escape routes blocked by federal investigation. Time to trigger the trap and watch 12 years of tyranny collapse in one spectacular weekend of public accountability. Karen's desperation reached full psychotic breakdown mode when she realized her precious annual gala was about to be humiliated by a community celebration of everything she'd tried to destroy for 12 years. Her opening move was straight environmental terrorism with a designer twist. At 3 a.m. Tuesday, security cameras caught Princess Karen sneaking around in a pink Lululemon tracksuit, dumping industrial algae bloom chemicals into the pristine water near my shoreline. She was trying to create a toxic disaster that would force cancellation of our lake festival and make me look like an environmental menace. The acrid smell of chemical death hung over the water like green funeral shroud as fish started floating belly up by sunrise. But Karen's Princeton education apparently never covered how to commit environmental crimes without being recorded in 4K resolution. My cameras captured everything: her guilty face illuminated by motion sensor floodlights, the unmarked containers of restricted algicides, even her panicked stumble when she realized she'd been caught red-handed poisoning the lake she claimed to protect. I called the environmental crimes hotline before my morning coffee finished brewing. Hazmat teams were testing water samples within hours while Karen played innocent victim, tearfully telling Channel 7 that eco-terrorists must be sabotaging our beautiful lake to damage property values and hurt our community. The chemical analysis revealed deliberate contamination with industrial algicides requiring federal permits just to transport, let alone dump into recreational waterways. Karen was facing environmental felony charges carrying mandatory prison time, and her performance as concerned citizen was Academy Award-worthy fiction. But eco-terrorism was just her opening act. Thursday brought the hired vandalism squad, two guys who looked like they'd flunked out of remedial criminal school but still needed beer money. They showed up after midnight with crowbars and spray paint, planning to trash my festival location and make it look dangerous for families. Motion sensors triggered my floodlight system, illuminating them like Christmas ornaments, while cameras recorded license plates, faces, and the distinctive prison tattoos that would make police identification embarrassingly simple. The sharp crack of breaking glass echoed across water as they smashed dock lights and spray-painted threats about keeping quiet and minding your business. Here's where 30 years of living in rough neighborhoods paid dividends. I'd been watching from my kitchen window with a baseball bat and my phone ready to call 911. When they started approaching the house where Cheryl was sleeping, I stepped onto the porch with the brightest flashlight money could buy. "Gentlemen, you're on camera committing felony vandalism on private property. I suggest leaving immediately before this becomes more expensive than Mrs. Whitmore is paying you." The taste of pure satisfaction mixed with righteous anger as they ran like scared rabbits, jumping into their rusted pickup and speeding away with tires squealing on gravel. But not before my security system captured everything needed to connect them directly to Karen's escalating harassment campaign. Friday brought Karen's masterpiece of false accusations. She filed a police report claiming I'd threatened her with military weapons during our previous property discussion, painting herself as an innocent victim terrorized by a dangerous veteran with PTSD and violent tendencies. Sheriff Morrison, still Karen's golf buddy despite mounting corruption evidence, reluctantly showed up with a search warrant for illegal weapons and evidence of terroristic threatening. His obvious discomfort was painful to watch as he went through motions of investigating his friend's obviously fabricated story. But timing is everything in comedy and justice. While Morrison was searching my garage for non-existent evidence, FBI agents were simultaneously serving federal warrants on Bradley's zoning office and the Whitmore mansion. News vans lined their street like vultures as federal investigators carried out boxes of evidence while Karen screamed about political persecution and harassment of law-abiding citizens. The irony was delicious. Karen claiming harassment while federal agents documented 12 years of her criminal harassment of others, all captured on live television for the evening news. Saturday morning delivered Karen's final desperate gambit, and the evidence that would destroy her forever. She attempted to bribe County Supervisor Martinez with a leather briefcase containing $50,000 cash, demanding he issue an emergency shutdown order for our lake festival citing public safety concerns and environmental protection needs. Martinez had been expecting this exact move. FBI agents recorded everything from a surveillance van as Karen laid out her corruption offer like she was ordering expensive wine at the country club. Supervisor Martinez, I'm prepared to offer substantial ongoing financial arrangements for continued cooperation in municipal matters affecting our community standards, Karen said, her voice carrying clearly through hidden microphones. Mrs. Whitmore, Martinez replied, what you're describing is attempted bribery of a public official. This conversation is over. Karen's perfectly made-up face went white as fresh snow when she realized Martinez was wearing a wire and FBI agents were probably watching from multiple angles. She grabbed her bribery briefcase and stumbled toward her BMW, muttering threats about destroying everyone and making people pay for betraying established relationships. Federal prosecutors now had recorded evidence of attempted bribery, environmental terrorism, conspiracy to commit vandalism, and filing false police reports, all committed while under active FBI investigation. Princess Karen's criminal empire was collapsing faster than her fake environmental activism, and the whole community was watching her burn. With her bribery attempt recorded by federal agents and her environmental crimes making headlines, Karen's final week of freedom became a masterclass in self-destruction that would be studied by criminal justice students for decades. Her nuclear option was attempting to have me committed for psychiatric evaluation, filing paperwork claiming I was clearly suffering from severe PTSD and posed imminent danger to community safety. She'd recruited a sketchy psychiatrist who owed Bradley favors from past zoning approvals to sign off on emergency mental health detention orders. Dr. Marcus Webb looked like he'd bought his medical degree from a Cracker Jack box, but his signature on official letterhead was all Karen needed to weaponize the mental health system against me. The man had a history of rubber stamping involuntary commitments for wealthy clients trying to control family members or business partners. But Karen's desperation made her sloppy. She filed the petition using falsified medical records claiming I'd been making terroristic threats and displaying erratic veteran behavior consistent with dangerous psychological breakdown. Problem was, she fabricated evidence of doctor visits that never happened and medications I'd never taken. My actual military medical records told a completely different story. Clean psychological evaluations, no PTSD diagnosis, exemplary service record with commendations for cool-headed decision-making under pressure. When the county mental health examiner compared Karen's fabricated evidence with authentic VA documents, her fraud became obvious. Meanwhile, the state attorney general's office was building a RICO case that would dismantle the entire Whitmore corruption network. Anonymous tips flooded in from victims who'd been silent for years, encouraged by seeing Karen finally facing real consequences for her crimes. Local business owners revealed years of permit extortion. Elderly residents shared stories of harassment and intimidation. Even some country club members provided evidence of Karen's attempts to buy political influence through illegal campaign contributions and municipal bribery schemes. But Karen wasn't finished destroying herself. She attempted to file elder abuse charges against me, claiming I was financially exploiting Cheryl's disability and manipulating a vulnerable woman for personal gain. The accusation was so absurd it would have been funny if it wasn't potentially devastating to families who actually face elder abuse. The sharp taste of rage mixed with disbelief as I read her sworn statement describing Cheryl as clearly being controlled by an unstable husband who isolates her from medical care and uses her condition to generate sympathy for his criminal activities. Cheryl's reaction was nuclear. My wife had been quietly supporting my fight against Karen's harassment, but attacking her directly was like poking a sleeping grizzly bear with a sharp stick. That lying witch thinks she can use my lupus against us, Cheryl said, her voice carrying the steel that had helped her survive 30 years of military life and chronic illness. Time to show Princess Karen what a real woman looks like when she's done playing nice. Cheryl contacted every disability rights organization in 3 states, sharing documentation of Karen's discrimination and harassment based on medical conditions. The disability community rallied around us with legal resources, media connections, and political influence that Karen never saw coming. The bribery sting operation reached its climax when Karen approached the township's new environmental inspector with a suitcase full of cash and promises of ongoing consulting arrangements if he would file false reports about my lake festival, creating ecological disasters and public health emergencies. Inspector Williams was actually an undercover FBI agent who'd been posing as a municipal employee for 6 weeks, documenting corruption throughout the township government. His hidden recording equipment captured Karen offering detailed bribes while simultaneously admitting to her own environmental crimes. "I need you to understand that Dale's activities threaten everything we've built in this community," Karen told the fake inspector, her voice clear as crystal on FBI recording equipment. "I'm prepared to offer substantial financial incentives for reports that reflect the real environmental dangers his illegal modifications create." What she didn't know was that federal prosecutors were simultaneously serving search warrants on Bradley's office, seizing computers, financial records, and communication devices that would expose 12 years of systematic corruption. The media circus reached peak insanity when Karen held an impromptu press conference on her mansion's front lawn, surrounded by news cameras and federal agents processing evidence from her home. She claimed to be the victim of a deep state conspiracy, targeting successful conservative families who built this community through decades of service and leadership. Her performance was spectacular theater. Designer dress, perfect makeup, voice cracking with manufactured emotion as she painted herself as an innocent victim of government persecution and liberal environmental activism. But reality was closing in faster than Karen could spin lies. Local contractors publicly refused her business after witnessing her racist harassment of workers. Country club members distanced themselves from someone under federal investigation. Even her household staff quit rather than work for a suspected criminal. The community that had tolerated her abuse for 12 years was finally seeing Karen's true nature exposed in blazing daylight. Federal investigators, environmental agencies, civil rights organizations, and media outlets were all focused on dismantling the criminal empire she'd built through corruption and intimidation. Princess Karen's reign of terror was ending, and she was the architect of her own spectacular downfall. Saturday night arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you believe in divine justice. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and temperature just right for the dual events that would determine whether Karen's criminal empire survived or burned to ashes on live television. Karen's Save Our Lake Gala was in full swing by 7 p.m. 200 guests in designer gowns and rented tuxedos, live jazz band, catered dinner that cost more than most families spend on groceries in 6 months. Local news crews covered the environmental conservation event while Karen positioned herself as the community's guardian angel, protecting precious natural resources. She looked absolutely stunning in a silver evening dress that probably cost more than my truck, her smile radiant as she posed for photos with state politicians and environmental officials who had no idea they were attending a criminal's farewell party. Meanwhile, our Community Lake Stewardship Festival was drawing families from across 3 counties. Kids learning to fish, disabled veterans enjoying accessible swimming areas, environmental scientists explaining real conservation to crowds of genuinely interested neighbors. The contrast couldn't have been more perfect if we'd scripted it. That's when the FBI chose to make their move. Federal agents arrived at Karen's mansion with arrest warrants for Bradley and his accomplices, timing their operation for maximum media coverage and public witness testimony. The sharp sound of car doors slamming echoed across the water as unmarked vehicles surrounded the gala venue like scene from a crime thriller. Karen's face went white as fresh paint when she spotted Agent Martinez walking through her perfectly manicured garden toward the mansion's back entrance. Her carefully controlled composure started cracking as she realized federal law enforcement was about to destroy her social event in front of everyone who mattered in county politics. The crowd at her gala watched in stunned silence as federal agents led Bradley away in handcuffs, his expensive tuxedo looking ridiculous as he shuffled toward unmarked cars with his hands secured behind his back. Local news cameras captured everything in high definition while Karen stood frozen on her mansion's steps like a designer statue. But Princess Karen wasn't going down quietly. She grabbed the wireless microphone from her jazz band's vocalist and addressed her shocked guests with the performance of a lifetime, her voice carrying across both events as lake acoustics amplified her desperate lies. Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing a politically motivated attack on conservative families who built this community through decades of service and leadership. This is environmental terrorism disguised as federal law enforcement. That's when I decided to crash her party with a little truth-telling of my own. Walking across the property line that had started this entire war, I approached the crowd of wealthy guests who were watching their host's husband get arrested for federal corruption. My voice carried clearly in the evening air as I addressed the people who'd enabled Karen's criminal behavior through years of willful blindness. Folks, I'm Dale, your neighbor who's been fighting Mrs. Whitmore's criminal harassment for the past year. Those federal agents aren't here because of politics. They're here because we uncovered 12 years of systematic corruption, environmental crimes, and civil rights violations. I held up the chemical analysis reports from Karen's attempt to poison the lake, the bank records showing Bradley's bribery scheme, the documented evidence of permit manipulation and wetlands fraud that federal prosecutors would soon present to a grand jury. This woman standing in her designer dress crying about persecution? She dumped industrial chemicals into our lake to sabotage a community festival. She offered $50,000 in bribes to shut down environmental education for children. She's been stealing federal conservation money to fund illegal dock modifications that kill fish and destroy habitat. Karen's response was spectacular nuclear meltdown territory. She lunged at me with her microphone raised like a weapon, screaming about lying white trash and destroying property values, while her stunned guests backed away from the unhinged woman they'd thought they knew. You have no right to destroy everything I've built. This is my community, my lake. My property, she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria as 12 years of entitlement and criminal behavior collapsed in real time. Security cameras, news crews, and FBI agents captured every second as Karen physically attacked me in front of 200 witnesses, destroying any remaining pretense of respectability or victimhood. Her designer dress tore as she swung wildly, her perfect makeup running with tears of rage and desperation. Local police arrived to arrest Karen for assault while federal agents continued processing evidence from her mansion. The contrast was beautiful. Our community festival continuing peacefully across the property line, while Karen's criminal gala dissolved into chaos and arrests. Agent Martinez announced that federal prosecutors were filing charges for corruption, environmental crimes, civil rights violations, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. Karen's attempt to buy her way out of consequences had instead provided the final evidence needed to destroy her entire operation. As they loaded Karen into the police cruiser, still screaming about political persecution and environmental terrorism, I realized we'd accomplished something bigger than just protecting our property rights. We'd proven that ordinary families could fight back against corrupt officials and win even when the system seemed rigged against us. Justice tastes sweeter than revenge, especially when it's served on live television. The sweet sound of children's laughter echoing across crystal-clear water where Karen once dumped industrial poison reminds me every morning that sometimes the good guys actually do win, especially when the bad guys are dumb enough to commit federal crimes on camera. Karen pled guilty to environmental terrorism, corruption conspiracy, and civil rights violations, earning 18 months in Club Fed plus 3 years supervised probation. She's permanently banned from holding municipal positions, serving on boards, or owning property within 10 miles of Willow Lake. Her mansion went into foreclosure when legal bills consumed Daddy's inheritance faster than she'd blown taxpayer money on illegal dock improvements. The sight of for sale signs rotting in her overgrown yard brings me more satisfaction than my morning coffee. Bradley got 3 years federal time for his corruption empire, lost his pension and benefits, and now stocks shelves at Home Depot 2 counties away. Apparently, municipal corruption doesn't include dental coverage when you factor in prison time and legal bankruptcy. Our civil lawsuit settled for $250,000 covering legal costs, property restoration, and compensation for years of harassment. But the real prize was permanent injunctive relief ensuring Karen can never again abuse official power to terrorize ordinary families trying to live the American dream. County voters recalled Commissioner Delacroix in a landslide that sent shockwaves through corrupt local politics. New officials implemented transparent permit processes, citizen oversight committees, and ethics rules that would have strangled Karen's criminal operation in its cradle. The lake transformation exceeded every dream Cheryl and I nurtured during 15 years of ramen dinners and secondhand everything. Our 3-acre property became Cheryl's Cove, an accessible swimming and therapy center serving disabled community members across 4 counties. Watching my wife teach adaptive swimming to kids with mobility challenges, seeing her laugh without wincing for the first time in years, reminds me what we were really defending. The University Research Station documenting ecosystem recovery has recorded miraculous environmental improvements since eliminating Karen's pollution sources. Fish populations exploded, water clarity improved dramatically, and wildlife returned to areas that had been ecological dead zones during her environmental reign of terror. But the community project that makes me proudest is our Environmental Stewardship Scholarship Fund, bankrolled by settlement money and ongoing donations from families who survived their own Karen-style nightmares. We've sent 12 students to study environmental law, conservation science, and public administration, training the next generation to protect communities from corruption masquerading as progress. Local fishing guides report the best catches in decades since removing Karen's illegal lights and dock violations. Our youth fishing program serves over 100 kids annually, teaching conservation ethics alongside angling skills. The small amphitheater hosts environmental education that reaches thousands of visitors learning about protecting water resources through community action rather than rich people's charity theater. Cheryl's health transformation has been the most beautiful outcome of our entire war. Regular therapeutic lake access, stress elimination from ending Karen's harassment, and purpose from leading accessibility advocacy have restored energy and hope I hadn't seen since her lupus diagnosis. She's become a regional champion for disability rights and environmental justice, proving that fighting corruption benefits everyone who values community over privilege. Our case became a national model for citizen-led corruption investigations. Legal advocacy groups teach our documentation methods and coalition-building strategies to families battling similar corruption across multiple states. We've helped dozens of communities fight back against officials who treat public service like personal profit centers. Environmental law schools study our conservation success, showing how ordinary citizens can protect natural resources when government agencies fail. Veterans organizations use our story highlighting discrimination against disabled service members and the power of community support for military families facing bureaucratic terrorism. Karen occasionally surfaces in local arrest reports, violating probation, harassing former neighbors from her subsidized housing, or attempting new schemes that land her back in legal trouble. She's become a living cautionary tale about what happens when entitled criminals discover that daddy's money can't buy immunity from federal consequences. The rich scent of clean lake air mixed with Cheryl's homemade coffee on our dock each morning tastes like victory served at the perfect temperature. Looking across pristine water toward the empty lot where Karen's criminal headquarters once poisoned our community, I'm reminded that the best revenge against corruption is building something infinitely better in its ruins. Our lake now serves hundreds of families who understand that real environmental protection comes from people who actually care about nature, not wealthy sociopaths performing conservation theater while committing ecological crimes. Drop your most insane HOA or psycho neighbor story in the comments. I read every nightmare and respond personally. Smash subscribe because next week's story involves a corrupt mayor trying to steal a children's playground. And the FBI sting operation ending will melt your brain.